Deep dives and blue skies. Welcome back to Talking Blue with Nick, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you can find.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talking Blue, the best Dodgers analytical podcast that you could find. I'm your host, Nick. You are listening to episode 107 of Talking Blue. We are here today to recap the Dodgers and the A's. That wrapped up last night. Dodgers will actually take on the Padres later tonight in LA for a 4-game set, so that'll be pretty big. But we're here to talk about the Dodgers, the A's, that series that wrapped up. Dodgers took 2 out of 3, tried to get the sweep last night. We're not able to. And we're also going to talk about, obviously, you can see by the title of the video, Dave Roberts. He gets his 1,000th win as a manager, as the manager of the Dodgers the last decade. So we're going to get to all of that stuff. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow us on all social media at Talkin' Blue Pod. That is Instagram, TikTok, and X. And you could also follow myself on X at Nick Talkin' Ball. So, before we get into the series, just a quick injury roster stuff. Not a ton of injury updates, but Mookie Betts, he did miss Game 3 of this series Wednesday night because he had right wrist soreness. He was scratched from the lineup. So, of course, hopefully this does not turn into anything. They said that they expect him to be in there tonight. You know, that was part of the reason they had him miss Wednesday so he could be ready to go tonight. So, you know, he played the last few days. He's looked much better as of late. Hopefully, this is very similar to just Kyle Tucker the other day, a week ago, when he had the sore knee and then he was back in there. Or was that his knee? I think it was his back, actually. Yeah. Hopefully, it's very similar and not a big deal, but it is worth mentioning. And so, obviously, it'll be something to pay attention to when that lineup comes out later tonight. Will Smith, still not doing any baseball activities, and it is official. He will not return until after the All-Star break. Now, it has not been specified, I believe, to my knowledge, as to if his return will be like right when the All-Star break or when we come out of the break, which is usually like a Friday night game, or, you know, just sometime after the All-Star break. I got to imagine it's still not anything major. It was just neck stiffness. So I wouldn't be shocked if as soon as the All-Star break we get wrapped up with the All-Star stuff and the second half begins, he'll be ready to go, but maybe it'll be, you know, a couple series after that. Kike Hernandez, he has made good progress on the oblique that he strained, continuing to ramp up baseball activities. It sounds like he's actually not far along, and I wouldn't be surprised if him and Will are pretty much activated like right after the break. Edwin Diaz should be facing hitters this weekend for the first time since his surgery. That's a big step. Probably can start to look towards seeing Diaz possibly at the end of this month of July. I haven't even mentioned that we are in July. Happy July, everybody. 4th of July in a couple days. 4th of July weekend. No longer in the month of June. So we can see if we'll see if Diaz can be activated towards the end of this July. I wouldn't be shocked if it was like right into early August. Tyler Glasnow, he has begun playing catch, so that's great. Dodgers are hopeful there will be no more setbacks. So just a hope, you know, we hope that we can, this all goes go. My hair looks crazy right now. All right, Evan Phillips, last guy, nearing the end of his rehab assignment. I would imagine that he gets activated before the break. We actually have basically a week, I guess you could call it a week and a half left of the first half. Dodgers will play the Padres this weekend for 4, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then they will play the Rockies at home next week, early in the week, and then the Diamondbacks to close up the first half. Dodgers open up the first half with the Diamondbacks at home and then close the first half with the Diamondbacks at home. And then that'll be the whole first half, so 3 more series to go. I would imagine that Phillips, we get to see him before the first half ends, whether it be next week against the Rockies or the Diamondbacks, and then, you know, he should basically be ready to go for the second half. So let's go into Game 1, which was Monday night, June 29th, Eric Lauer, lefty matchup against Gage Jump, the, like I said, lefty of the A's in Sacramento. All right, so in the top of the second, the Dodgers get on the board first thanks to an RBI single from Max Muncy. Later in that inning, another RBI single from Dalton Rushing makes it 2-0. The A's would get on the board in the bottom of the second. Colby Thomas, who I believe is a former Dodgers farmhand, homers to right field. cuts the deficit in half, 2-1 Dodgers. Little later, Joshua Kuroda Grower. I don't know how to say that last name, excuse me. He made a bunch of nice plays defensively in this series. Ties the game up with an RBI single to make it 2-2. The A's actually took the lead. Henry Bolt, RBI ground out, makes it a 3-2 game. So the A's take the lead. But we go to the fourth inning. Max Muncy, his 17th home run of the year to right field. This ties up the game. Little later in that inning, Anthony Pages, his 16th home run of the year. That's a great sign for Paz, who has struggled as of late, and we'll talk about Andy in a second. That puts the Dodgers on top 5-3. Later on in the sixth inning, Shohei Ohtani, a solo home run to right field, an absolute missile. Left on left, got a hanging breaking ball, hit it out to those the berm out there and right with all the the grass section, kind of basically just looks like a spring training field. The A's temporary home, so it's 8-3 Dodgers. Later on, Freddie Freeman, he hits an RBI single to make it 9-3. The A's would tally on one more run against Jack Dreyer in the ninth to make it a 9-4 game, but the Dodgers would win by a score of 9-4. Eric Lauer for sixth, Kyle Hurt for one, Jonathan Hernandez for 1.1, and then Jack Dreyer for 2/3 of an inning, and the Dodgers get the win. Let's start off with talking about Eric Lauer, who just keeps rolling in a Dodger uniform. All right, his final line, he goes 6 innings pitched, did allow 9 hits. That is a lot of hits. He only gave up 3 earned runs, so he's kind of fortunate to just allow those 4 earned runs. 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, the 1 home run that he gave up to Colby Thomas. He actually lowers his ERA sub-5. This was a guy, when he came to the Dodgers, had an ERA in the mid-6s. All right, so a horrible ERA. And he has been very, very good since putting on a Dodger uniform. In 34 1/3 innings pitched as a Dodger, he has a 2.88 ERA. And as a Blue Jay, he had 36 1/3 innings pitched, a 6.69 ERA. So he's basically pitched the exact same amount of innings with the Dodgers, and he has a much better ERA, an elite ERA, a sub-3 ERA. Last couple podcasts ago, I was talking about what some of the changes are that Lauer has made. I have now been able to dig into some of the pitch metrics and what has he done in terms of his pitch usage. So his fastball usage has decreased in a Dodger uniform. So 24% as a Blue Jay, down to 20% as a Dodger. So less fastball and less changeup. All right, he's got a pretty solid changeup, but less changeup. 9.3% as a Blue Jay, 7.4% as a Dodger. The pitches that he's increased, all right, so something that the Dodgers obviously dug into and maybe said, hey, these are the pitches we think that you could throw a little bit more of. 5.5% curveball as a Blue Jay. It's up to 6.9%, so basically 7% with the Dodgers. As a result, the whiff rate has slightly increased on that pitch, and he has just better numbers overall on that pitch, the curveball. So his expected batting average was 256 with the Blue Jays, 206 with the Dodgers. All right, so he's changed up his pitch metrics a little bit less fastball and changeup, a little bit more cutter and curveball. As a left-handed pitcher, the Dodgers definitely, over watching them over the, my whole life, but especially in the last 5 to 8 years or so, they really love guys to have cutters to throw to the opposite-handedness. I can't even tell you how many pitchers: Walker Buehler, Blake Trinan, Brusdar Graterol, Evan Phillips. Even Glass now throws more of a slider, and so did Clayton Kershaw. But so there are so many guys who have the Dodgers have. They really like guys with that cutter, and it's a really valuable pitch. It's not really a pitch you use to get a lot of swing and miss on. But when you can kind of get in on the opposite-handedness, so Lauer obviously being left-handed, you're going to face more right-handed hitters. Cutter can be a good pitch to get in and make right-handed hitters uncomfortable, just kind of own that inner part of the plate. So I wonder if that's part of their thinking. And then obviously the curveball, again, a pitch that as a left-hander is going to be good to throw against right-handed hitters, seeing more right-handed hitters than lefties. So overall, his walk rate, I've talked about this before, the Dodgers have Eric Lauer, the Dodgers, whoever, has increased or decreased his walk rate. So from 9.9% as a Blue Jay, so basically 10%, down to 6.6% as a Dodger. But the biggest key is the type of outs he's getting. Ground balls. You guys always hear me talk about this. Ground balls are key. You can get away and get outs in this league, even without being a strikeout pitcher, if you can get ground balls. You don't have to get ground balls, but especially for a guy who doesn't get strikeouts like Eric Lauer, like Justin Robleski, it is key to get ground balls. Robleski doesn't even get that much ground balls, but ground balls are huge because when the ball's on the ground, the opposing hitters can't slug, less home runs, less extra base hits, and also it can lead to outs, getting out of innings with double plays, all that kind of stuff. So as a Blue Jay, 24.8% ground ball rate. With the Dodgers, it's up to 40.2%. So a massive increase in ground balls. As a result, the opponent's slug, 542 opponent's slug as a Blue Jay, 540, that's you're getting crushed. 371 opponent's slug with the Dodgers, so a much bigger improvement there. The Dodgers pitching staff has the best batting average on balls in play, best BABIP. All right, so turning balls in play into outs. All right, they cover the most ground in the outfield. They also have a very good infield. If you go and look around the infield, all right, as a team, they are top 6 in fielding run value, outs above average, and defensive run saved. That's the entire team as a whole. They don't have a bad defender in their infield. Every infielder they have, which is Freddie Freeman, Alex Freeland, Mookie Betts, and Max Muncy. Miguel Rojas is also an elite defender. He just doesn't have as many numbers as these guys because he doesn't play as much. All of those guys that I mentioned are plus defenders at their position. They're all top 10 in their position in fielding run value. So they're all elite. So I think that part of the thing that has benefited Lauer is that getting to a better defensive team. The Blue Jays are not a bad defensive team, but the Dodgers are just better. So more ball with a guy like that, he's going to have the ball in play with a better defense. Muncy's just everything hit his way. He's turning balls into outs. Same thing with Mookie Betts. Alex Freeland's elite, and then Freddie Freeman has also been a great defensive first baseman. So the better defense is going to allow those batted balls to turn into outs. So he's really taken advantage of, a really good defense and just a really good defense, infield defense, and a really good defense overall. So before we get to game 2, Dodgers offense obviously put up 9 runs in this game on 17 hits, so a lot of offense. First 2 games were a big-time offensive showing. Andy Paez, he had 2 hits, and including his 16th home run of the year. From May 15th to June 15th, so an entire month, 28 games, he had an OPS of just 701. So Andy Paez had been struggling for a little bit. All right, it kind of brought his numbers down to much more in line as to what you kind of would expect from Paez. High 700s OPS, all right. In his last 7 games, though, he has an 876 OPS. All right, so his numbers look a little bit better. And, Paez is one of the more streaky hitters on the Dodgers, no doubt. He doesn't necessarily have the Max Muncy, Mookie Betts X type of profile. He swings the bat a lot. He's aggressive. He'll chase. So that will lead to you being more of a streaky hitter. When the ball's not dropping in, when you're facing a little bit of stretch of some better pitching, guys are executing, you're not taking your walks, you will go through slumps. He's not as much of a slump-proof hitter like a Freddie Freeman or anything like that. So anyways, he is playing much better as of late, so hopefully this is trending towards the hot streak, the hot part of Andy Paez's season. All right, so next guy, Kyle Tucker. He had 2 hits in this game. He has a 931 OPS in his last 7 games, so he's actually crushing the ball the last 7 games. That's huge. We know one of the bigger stories all year. Not one of the bigger stories, but in terms of a negative, one of the biggest negative stories of the Dodgers this year has been Tucker's disappointing season. So anytime we're going to see him play better, I'm going to talk about it and hope it leads to a big turnaround. I am still hopeful. All right, we're wrapping up the first half of the season, before the All-Star break. I know we've already played half a season, but the first half in terms of the All-Star break is about to wrap up. So he's got a week and a half to finish strong and then look forward to the final 3 months of the season. All right, Max Muncy, he also had 2 hits in this game, 17th home run of the year. He has arguably been the Dodgers' most steady and consistent hitter all year. When you consider, Freddie Freeman, technically by his standards, got off to a cold start. Same thing with Ohtani. Obviously, we know about Mookie, Tucker. And then Paez would have been up there, but the last month or so he has struggled, other than those 7 games that I just mentioned. Muncy, I'm sure you could find a small portion of little stretches that he was cold. I think at some point in May to wrap up May or something like that, or June. But for the most part, Muncy's just been great the entire year. 871 OPS, 16th best in baseball. 140 WRC plus is also 16th best. He's definitely on track to have a career year in terms of FWAR because of the bat, how good it is, and then now he has the elite defense tied along with that. We'll see where his numbers land at the end of the year. It's going to be close in terms of his best offensive year. It's going to be close with his first year with the Dodgers, 2018, and then 2021, where he hit like 36 home runs. It'll be close. I think his first year with the Dodgers, he put up like a 160 WRC plus. I don't think he'll do that. Part of that is because he was so amazing, and he did miss he didn't get called up till like late April that year, so he did have less at-bats, which does allow him to have a little bit of a higher WRC plus. He's more mostly in his career is more in line with 130 to 140. So we'll just see. I found that interesting, but Muncy's looked great. Let's go to game 2 and talk about Justin Robleski and all the great things he did. But game 2, which was Tuesday night, Justin Robleski taking on Jeffrey Springs. Let's go to that. First inning, Mookie Betts, an RBI single into left field. That puts the Dodgers up 1-0. Later on, a sac fly from Teoscar. This is still in the first inning. Makes it a 2-0 game. The A's would bounce back just like they did in the previous game. Bottom of the first, a Jonah Heim single. Cuts the deficit in half to a 2-1 game. Sorry if you hear thunder outside my building. It is about to pour. Tommy Edman with a 3-run homer to dead center. His first home run of the year makes it a 5-1 game. Later on in the 6th inning, Miguel Rojas, his third home run of the year, makes it 6-1. Then another hit from Tommy Edman makes it 7-1. This was in the 7th inning. And then Miguel Rojas with a sac fly. That makes it 8-1. Dalton Rushing, an RBI single, makes it 9-1. Colby Thomas, who just for whatever reason is getting revenge on the Dodgers, he homers off of Robleski in the 7th inning to make it a 9-3 game. But the Dodgers would hold on and win by a score of 9-3. Second straight game that they put up 9 runs. All right, let's talk about Robleski. Just like Eric Lauer, he was even better than Lauer, but he was fantastic. Robleski continues his very, very good season. So let me give you everybody you pitched. Robleski for 7, Brock Stewart for 1, and then Wyatt Mills, who was brought up to give a fresh arm for the Dodgers, and then he was actually sent back down for Wednesday's game. He pitched 1 inning. So Justin Robleski goes 7 innings pitched. 7 hits allowed, which is still a little bit high, but we know the ball's going to be in play with Robleski. 3 earned runs, 0 walks, 11 strikeouts. 11. That is a career high for Justin Robleski by far. I think his career high was 9, which he set about a month ago against the Phillies. And then, like I said, he did allow the 1 earned run. He lowers his ERA to 2.80. All right. Justin Robleski, again, like I said, fantastic for performance, especially in a ballpark where the ball flies like that. We saw it all series. The ball flied in. And actually, there are numbers that suggest it's right there with Coors Field and the Reds ballpark as some of the more hitter-friendly ballparks. Big outfield, a lot of ground to cover, and the ball flies up there in Sacramento in that heat. All right, so career high in strikeouts, career high in whiffs. He had 19 of those. And then career high on whiffs on the fastball, he had 13 of those. And I think his previous career high was like 7 or 8 on the fastball, so he blew that out of the water. All right, Robleski just continues this pretty crazy stretch that he's been on for the entire season. He's got a great shot, man, to be named to the All-Star team in about a week or so. The All-Star, obviously the pitchers are named. I don't know if it's the league who does it or the coaching staff technically, but he's got a great shot. His four-seam fastball is the 3rd best pitch in all of baseball according to run value, and it's the best overall fastball according to run value. Think about that. Let me say that again. His fastball is the 3rd best pitch, the 3rd best individual pitch. So every single pitch that every pitcher throws in the sport, Robleski's got the 3rd best according to run value. And then according to overall fastballs, it's number 1. So he's got the best fastball in the business right now. I know run value is a little bit of a weird stat. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's got the best swing and miss fastball and all that stuff, but it means that, based on the count leverage, the inning leverage and all that stuff, getting outs, getting out of innings, all that stuff, that's how you create run value and what makes it like a valuable pitch. It basically is the best fastball that leads to outs I guess is the best way to put it. He's actually slowly added more swing and miss as the season has progressed. I talked about this all year with Wroblewski, and I'm going to continue to say that he is one of the lesser strikeout pitchers in the game. And it is hard to have really dominant numbers when you don't get strikeouts. You can make it work. One of the reasons I should say he makes it work is because he pounds the strike zone and doesn't allow walks. But when you don't get a ton of swing and miss and strikeouts, it means that the ball will be in play, which does mean that you can give up 7 or 9 hits. Like I just said, he gave up 7 hits. He has slowly increased the swing and miss, and it does make me more, like I've said before, excited or just a little bit more confident that he can maintain some of this. I still don't think he will have a sub-3 ERA at the end of the season, but it does make me confident he could have a sub-4, like an ERA in the low 3s, mid 3s, and just overall have a very solid season like he has all the way up into now early July. So I wanted to give some numbers that show his swing and miss progression. So his first 6 games, it would be 5 starts. The first time he appeared was as a reliever. So 6 games, he had a 12.6% whiff rate and a 10% strikeout rate. His following 9 games, so the 9 games he's had since those first 6, he has a 23.2% whiff rate and a 21.6% strikeout rate. So the strikeout rate has basically doubled, and the whiff rate has basically doubled. So he has gotten more swing and miss and more strikeouts. The strikeout rate of 21.6%, that is actually basically a league average strikeout rate nowadays. League average strikeout rate for pitchers is like 22, 23%. So he's 21 and a half. So he's closer to a basically league average strikeout pitcher. All right, again, we know that he's not a big strikeout pitcher. The fastball that we talked about a second ago, the first 6 games, it averaged 93.5 miles an hour. It is now, the last 9 games, is averaging 94.7. So he's up from 93.5 to 94.7. That's a big jump in velo. The whiff rate on that pitch was 11%. In the last 9, it's up to 28%. All right. The expected batting average and expected slug were 253, 392. The last 9 games, 217, and then 350. So one of the biggest reasons for his improvement in whiffs is that the fastball has taken a jump in velocity, and then it's as a result, it's taken a jump in the whiff rate. So the overall whiff numbers look better, and he's got a 2.80 ERA, like I said, which is 11th best in baseball. His 217 batting average against is 18th best in baseball, top 20, and he's got the 4th lowest walk rate in the game at 4.9. So he's attacking the strike zone. He's increasing the swing and miss slowly, which him getting strikeouts is actually not crazy. I know this year it seems crazy because of the lack of stuff and whiff rate and the way he's gone about it. But a year ago, he did have a above average strikeout rate. He didn't get a ton of whiffs, but he did get some decent strikeouts. So it does show that it is in there somewhere, and the velocity has jumped up. He does rely a lot on just 2 pitches, which for him that works. You always hear like Oral Hershiser talk about some pitchers like to have a ton of different pitches, like Yu Darvish, and a lot of times when they pitch that day, their approach is see which of my 6 or 7 pitches are working that day, and then use 2 to 3 of them. Maybe my slider's not working, but my curveball is, or maybe my sinker is working, but my fastball's not. And then the flip side of that is that some pitchers, when you have that many pitches in your repertoire, it is hard to kind of balance everything out, and it's much easier to minimize everything and just have a couple of pitches. I don't necessarily love just 2 pitches. Wroblewski will mix in sinkers and changeups, but it really is just fastball slider, but it's working for him. He really has a great fastball upstairs. That's something I've noticed about him. He gets a lot of swing and miss at the top of the zone with that heater, so it works. So, as I always say, I don't know how the season will end for Wroblewski. I don't think he'll make a postseason start unless there's any injuries, but I think he'll definitely at some point if the postseason rolls around and it's what we expect in terms of Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, and Snell in the rotation, I think Wroblewski will go to the pen and will either be like a long man or a multi-inning guy, but regardless, one of the quiet MVPs of this team, especially on the pitching side. It's not as amplified because this year hasn't been crazy injury prone with the pitching. They are slightly dinged up right now on, as a whole and on the pitching side. But again, in terms of their rotation, it's basically just been two guys. And we know in the last couple of years, the Dodgers have had seasons where it's been a lot more than just two guys. It's been 3 to 4 pitchers hurt at once. Last year it was like Yamamoto. So the fact that right now they still have gotten a ton of out of Ohtani and Yamamoto, Snell, Sasaki, and Sheehan, it's basically just been Glasnow and Snell, the two most injury-prone guys. So Wroblewski, because of that, has been such an MVP. And it's not just like he's going out there and eating innings. He is pitching great. He's got a sub-3 ERA. He might even make the All-Star team, which would be one of the crazier All-Star game, All-Star nods in a while for the Dodgers. It's not crazy for them to have guys get voted in, of course, but you wouldn't have expected Justin Wroblewski. So talk about the offense really quick in this game, and then I wanted to talk about Dave Roberts, and then we'll go to Game 3. There wasn't really much to talk about in Game 3. They lost that game. But 9 more runs for the Dodgers offense on 14 more hits. Tommy Edman, 4 hits in his first home run of the year. Tommy Edman has sneaky pop. It's always easy to forget because he is more of a contact hitter. Obviously, he's a smaller guy, especially from the right side, though. He has some sneaky pop. I mean, that home run he hit on Tuesday, a line drive to dead center. I know the ball flies in Sacramento, but that was like, whoa, line drive to dead center off the batter's eye. Ball was absolutely crushed. 15 for 41 since coming off the IL, which was 2 weeks ago. He's hitting .366 with an OPS of .972. So Tommy Edman looks fantastic. Keep it up, Tommy. We really missed you. Mookie Betts, he had 3 more hits in this game, including a double. In his last 7 games, he has an 1174 OPS. He is raking the last 7 games. In his last 23 games, this is where Mookie really kind of turned things on. He's hitting .309 with a .356 on base, a .521 slug, an .878 OPS, and a .140 WRC plus. So that's the last 23 games. That's pretty close to a month in terms of a major league season. Hopefully he's fine with that wrist soreness, and he'll be back in there tonight, ready to kill the Padres. And then Miguel Rojas, his 3rd home run of the year, he is hitting .329 with a .919 OPS versus left-handed pitching. He's absolutely destroying left-handed pitching. And he is still an above-league average hitter as a whole when you talk about both sides. So, I'm pretty sure Miguel Rojas is going to retire, like he said, but he can still crush left-handed pitching. 919 OPS versus left-handed pitching. That's not just like, oh, you're better against lefties. That's like you crush lefties. Now, he does have like a 500 OPS versus righties. So he's a true split platoon hitter. Do not let him face righties. But he isn't necessarily, sometimes in the past, he's always hit good against lefties, but sometimes it was like, well, this is his better side, so if we're going to get him ABs, let's get him against lefties. Him having a 919 OPS versus lefties is like, you got to have him in there against lefties. It's a must because he's mashing them. So let's talk about Dave Roberts. I wanted to give him a pretty decent segment and just talk about him before we go to Game 3. He, of course, secured his 1,000th career win as a manager. The fastest manager to get to 1,000 wins in baseball history. He has a record of 1,607. That is a .622 winning percentage. That is also the best of all time. He is a 3-time World Series champ as a manager, a 5-time pennant winner, so he's been to the World Series 5 times, a 9-time division champ, and 10 postseason berths in his tenure with the Dodgers. He was a manager of the year in 2016. 4 different 100-win seasons. That is the most all-time is 6, and he has 4. So he's got a chance to get that at some point in his career. The Dodgers are currently on pace for 102 wins. So maybe at the end of this year, he'll just be 1 short of the all-time record for 100-win seasons as a manager. In the postseason, he has a record of 69-52. Those 69 wins are 3rd most in history behind Joe Torre and Tony La Russa. And Joe Torre has the most wins, which I think he has 85. So that's actually not far. Let's say, I know anything could happen, but let's say hypothetically the Dodgers go back to back to back. They win their 3rd straight this year. I think you have to win at least to win a World Series. You have to win 4, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that would put him at 80 wins at least. All right. That would put him at least 80 wins. And Dave Roberts is only 54 years old, so he would have a really good chance to pass Joe Torre with the most postseason wins of all time. In his 10 seasons as the Dodgers manager, he has never missed the playoffs. Never. Not once. Okay. He is quickly building a resume as one of the best managers ever. Okay. He's already going to be a Hall of Famer because he has 3 rings and all the success he's had with the division titles, never making the playoffs these first 10 years, all the postseason wins that he has. He will be in the Hall of Fame as a manager. If he manages, another 10 years, he's 54 years old, so he does have a pretty decent, amount of time left. That's, fairly not young, but definitely not old. I mean, he could manage 10 more years until he's 64 at least. I think Bruce Bochy managed a couple of years ago in his 70s, so, he's nowhere close to done. If he manages another 10 years and adds to this resume, let's say he gets another ring. I mean, who knows how many more it can be, but let's say he gets another ring. He's got 4 rings as a manager. Let's say he gets the most wins in postseason history, passes Joe Torre, gets close to like 90 wins, whatever it is. He continues to have the highest winning percentage of all time. And now that he's at 1,000, like if he continues to stack that up for 10 more years, he will be close to whatever the all-time record is for the most wins of all time. It's like 2,000-something wins, I think. Continue to add to his resume, and actually would have a chance to be looked at as like a top 10 manager of all time when you take a look at his resume. And, the first thing that I want to say with Dave Roberts is a lot of people, when you hear Dave Roberts talk, is they go to the Dodgers roster. Like, I put something out on my Reddit the other day. There was a handful of comments that said, well, no crap, anyone could manage the Dodgers, or anyone could have had success with these teams, and yeah, it's understood that Dave Roberts in his 10 years, 2026 is when he was hired, he has had a host of amazing players, obviously. I mean, you could go down the list. He had MVP Cody Bellinger, prime Mookie Betts, prime Shohei Ohtani, Clayton Kershaw, there's a million players, Corey Seager, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, the list goes on. Kenley Jansen, Max Scherzer. There's so many. He's had a million great players. There's no doubt. I do think Dave needs to be given credit that in these 10 years, the Dodgers have never had a real regular season let up. Again, I know, I get it. Some people will say, well, how could you not make the playoff with those rosters? Yeah, he has done. To a certain extent, he's done what you're supposed to do with these teams, make the playoffs. But every organization that is compared to the Dodgers or has been somewhat on their level, because I don't think anyone's been on their level in the last decade, you could point at the Houston Astros, who aren't a big market, but they have played in a lot of postseason games, won 2 World Series. The Yankees, who haven't had a World Series, but are a big market team that spend money and are in the playoffs every year. A handful of other teams. All of those teams have still had random letdowns. Okay, like the Houston Astros 10 years ago, 2016, they didn't make the playoffs. Last year, the Houston Astros did not make the playoffs. It looks like they're not going to make it this year. We'll see. The Yankees, 2023, they did not make the playoffs. I know it's just 1 year, but if we're comparing Dave Roberts to other guys, the Dodgers and Dave Roberts have not had one let up. The worst year regular season wise for Dave Roberts was last year, where the Dodgers won 93 games and the second half felt like a miserable second half. They still won 93 games, won the division, and obviously we know what happened in the postseason. I think his first year with the Dodgers, 2016, they might have won 93 games or something like that. But I think he should be given credit that regardless of injury years or whatever the case may be, he's never faltered or the standard is always, we don't care about any of that, injuries or maybe some lesser play. How many teams, go back a few years ago, could have had an MVP in Cody Bellinger as the focal part of their team, fall off the way he did, and still have it not affect their team. Again, I know they had other players outside of Bellinger, but if Aaron Judge, who is currently injured right now, and Bellinger wasn't as good as Judge is, but right now Judge just got hurt, taken off the Yankees, and look what the heck, the Yankees are falling from the sky right now. I think they'll make the playoffs and all that, but it just shows like Dave Roberts should be credited for a lot of those kind of things. Like he's never really allowed the Dodgers to have. Remember that one year where the Dodgers just had a random down year? It's never really happened under his watch. He deserves a lot of credit for that. And I do think that as a manager, he has gotten a lot better. I would say like really ever since they won that first World Series in 2020. I think that earlier in his tenure, he was, that was like the early age, not early, but like kind of in the middle of the analytical age and the way that a lot of managers and front offices approach managing a game. And Dave, early in his Dodgers tenure, definitely felt like he made a lot of decisions that were very like mapped out and planned out before the game, which I still imagine they do a lot. A lot of teams still do that stuff. Going into a postseason game, you're like, hey, this is how many innings we want this guy to go, and this is where we want to. So I'm not saying he doesn't do that anymore, but there was a lot of decisions earlier in his career that were felt like kind of like lack of a feel. You go back to 2018, 2019, a couple postseasons where it was like just decisions that were questionable with the bullpen. The bullpen is the hardest thing for a pitcher to manage, for a manager to manage. The bullpen is very difficult because it's hard to decide like when to get a guy out of the game, when to get a pitcher up in the pen, when to bring him in. And being a manager is such a thankless job because when the team's winning, they get all the credit. When the team's losing, they look at you. When you make a decision as a manager, when the decision works out, you look like a genius. When the decision doesn't work out, it's your fault, and why did you make that decision? So it's a very thankless job, and I do think he should get credit overall, and I do think since that World Series in 2020, 2021, that kind of time period is where I started to notice like he became a much better manager. I'll give you a perfect example. You could go back and watch this. The 2021 wild card game. So famously, that was when Chris Taylor hit that walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth against the Cardinals. If you go back and watch that game, Max Scherzer started the game. This was, of course, the year before playoff expansion. So this was a one game for your season. One game, winner take all. They started Max Scherzer in that game as the starting pitcher. And if you remember, he had an incredible season that year, and he was traded to the Dodgers, and he was even better with the Dodgers. He was amazing. Like, he dominated that second half. So in that game, Scherzer just didn't have his best command. You can go back and watch. He allowed a run in the first inning, I believe. He gave up a couple walks. He did not have his best stuff. Dave Roberts had to make a tough decision to yank Scherzer early in that game. It was either in the third or the fourth inning, maybe the fifth inning, but it was early in the game. He made a tough decision to take Scherzer out in the middle of an inning, brought in Joe Kelly to get out of an inning. You could watch that game. He pushed the button so perfectly. Went to Joe Kelly, went to Brusdar Graterol, went to Corey Knebel, went to Blake Trinan, went to Kenley Jansen. Like, just a complete masterclass. And part of the reason they won that game, he as a whole, I think, has gotten so much better at things like that. You could go back and watch 2024 when they had a shutdown bullpen. He was so perfect at, the Dodgers had no starting pitching that year. Again, obviously they had a good bullpen. That was part of the reason, and he had good options, but he was so good at like taking the starting pitcher out at the right time, bringing in a reliever, high leverage guys, perfect situation. So I just think overall, he is definitely a player's manager. You hear it so often. The players are really comfortable playing for him. He definitely being a manager is such a tough job because all you can do as a manager is like believe in your guys and have their back. Because so many managers are forced to like play a player that's there, even though he's not really playing that well, but the front office might be saying, hey, the underlying metrics say that this guy's going to turn around, or we believe in this guy's makeup. And a lot of fans might be giving guys, the organization or the manager, a lot of crap. Like, why are you running this guy out there? Well, the manager has to, like, you can't, like, A manager can't be out there and be like, look, guys, I don't know what the hell. Like, this guy sucks right now. I don't know what we're going to do. Like, he has to just be like, I know the performance doesn't look great, but we believe he's going to turn it around. And, so I just think that there's a lot of things that make being a manager a thankless job. And Dave Roberts, 1,000 career wins. He is just 10 years into his career. Maybe he can manage another 10 years, who knows how many more rings. And I just think he is truly, on a pure baseball mind aspect, do I think Dave Roberts is like the best manager in baseball? Probably not. There's probably a couple of managers who are a little bit better than him. But I think he's certainly top 5. And I certainly think that if you made the argument he is top number 1, I should say, I can't argue against that because he's the most winningest manager currently in baseball. So he's the perfect guy for the Dodgers. I think that he will go into the Hall of Fame as a manager, and he will probably manage for the Dodgers as long as he wants, honestly. Like, if he wants to go another 10 years, he'll probably just manage until he wants to retire. So pretty cool stuff. Let's go to Game 3 because we just spent a ton of time on Dave Roberts. Game 3, this game absolutely sucked. So Jack Dreyer opened the game, and then Charlie Barnes, who was called for Wyatt Mills to come up. I'll be honest. This is one of those not punt games, not punting, obviously trying to lose, but it's one of those games where you're like, the Dodgers have a 4-game set coming up. They've played a lot of games as of late, getting close to the All-Star break in a week. So they obviously took the approach of, we need someone to come in and eat a lot of innings so we can get ready for this 4-game set, because it is a pretty important 4-game set against the Padres. I'll talk about that in a sec. So Charlie Barnes was brought up, and it's basically, hey, brother, you're going to eat as many innings as we can. Hopefully the offense can put up 15 runs for you, but if not, regardless of the score, you're going to stay out there. So Jonah Heim gets the A's on the board first in the second inning with a solo shot to make it 1-0. Freddie Freeman would tie the game, and I'll talk about him in a sec, with his 14th home run of the year to make it 1-1. But in the bottom of the fourth, with Charlie Barnes on the mound, Lawrence Butler RBI ground out makes it 2-1. Henry Bolt makes it 3-1. Shea Langoliers, a couple innings later, makes it a 4-1 game. Colby Thomas just murdered the Dodgers for no reason. He makes it a 5-1 game. Then we got Jonah Heim, another RBI, 6-1, and then Alika Williams, the shortstops, makes it a 7-1 game, and the A's win by a score of 7-1. They get a win to salvage their series. So the Dodgers don't get the sweep, but they do get the series win. Like I said, Jack Dreyer goes 1 inning pitched. Charlie Barnes goes 7, and those are the only 2 pitchers. So all the pitchers, Tanner Scott, Messia, everybody in the pen gets rested and gets prepared to take on the Padres for an important 4-game set. Barnes went allowed 12 hits, 7 earned runs. Hopefully, Dodgers chip in and get the guy, show their appreciation, because what a thankless job to get called up and basically say, hey man, we don't care if you give up 7 earned runs. You got to go 7 innings pitched, give up 12 hits, and probably get sent back down the next day. That's a tough job. So hopefully the Dodgers all, hey, I'm sure they do. They're a smart organization. Pat him on the back and say, hey, we really appreciate what you did. It's small parts like that. As dumb as it sounds, small things like that are what can add up to make a successful team. As dumb as it sounds, but you need your relievers rested. The Dodgers have thankfully had a rested pen all year, but they were kind of in a position where. Another thing that was mentioned, I forgot to even mention, is Ohtani didn't even pitch in this series. That's also part of it. They wanted to obviously push him back. He will pitch Friday night. Roki will get the ball tonight. So they wanted to give Ohtani a rest. Some people were making jokes that Shohei saw how bad that ballpark was, and he was like, I ain't pitching in that ballpark. I'm sure they wanted to give him some extra rest, give the pen some rest. They got to accomplish both of those things. So not able to win the game. What are you going to say? I mean, Charlie Barnes pitched. So let's talk about Freddie Freeman before we get out of here. He hit his 14th home run of the year in that game. He went 5 for 11 in this series. He's been raking for 2 months now, basically. But it just seems like as this hot stretch has gone on from the beginning of May, he's actually gotten better and better and better, where for a lot of the time he was actually just hitting for average and then just slugging. Right now he is slugging and he's just like, the batting average is crazy. So in his last 7 games, he's hitting 480, so almost 500, with a 1287 OPS. In his last 15 games, he's hitting 389 with a 1132 OPS. And then in his last 30 games, which is the last month, he's hitting 336 with a 975 OPS. So he almost has a 1,000 OPS the last month. And I wanted to give some of these numbers, this little deep dive, because the first month of the year, first 29 games to be exact, you could have, potentially asked yourself, was Freddie starting to show some age? If you watch this pod, you know that I didn't say any of that. I was confident that it was more unluckiness. Freddie was still hitting the ball hard. Got off to a fairly decent start, but then the last couple weeks of April, a little bit of a cold stretch, kind of dinged his numbers to where 1 month into the regular season, he was hitting 259 with a 328 on base, very low for Freddie Freeman, a 414 slug, and a 742 OPS. He was like barely a league average hitter. Obviously, super small sample size, and he did exactly what I thought he was going to do, so this doesn't shock me. But it does show that for some people who might have thought, he was going to fall off or whatever, not the case. He only had 3 home runs and 7 doubles. Well, 55 games since then. This is since May 1st. He is hitting 315, which is 7th in that time period, 414 on base, which is 4th, 555 slug, which is a monstrous slug for Freddie Freeman, which is 11th in that time frame. 961 OPS is 4th, 167 WRC plus is 3rd, and then how about a 2.5 F-WAR in that time period? That is 5th best. On the year, he has an 887 OPS, which is 14th best in baseball. A 146 WRC plus is 12th. So a top 15 hitter in the sport. He deserves to be starting the All-Star game for the NL at first base, and I believe he will. And it's funny because for a lot of the year, it was either Bryce Harper, Matt Olson, and Freddie Freeman who are in the conversation. And right now in the All-Star voting, I haven't talked about this a lot on this podcast. I talk about it on my other podcast, Baseball Mondays, where I talk about all things baseball. I talked about the All-Star voting, where the All-Star voting, unfortunately, sometimes is a little just not the best. Like right now in the AL, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is leading vote getter over Ben Rice. And actually, neither of those two guys deserve to be the starter. It's actually Nick Kurtz for the A's. But Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has literally a sub 700 OPS. So it's just one of those things where the fans vote. Sometimes, unfortunately, they vote the more popular guys. Freddie, for the entire voting since it opened like 3-4 weeks ago, has been the leading vote getter, even though for most of the year, Olsen was probably more deserving. And then in the last couple weeks, it became Bryce Harper. Well, he now has better numbers than actually both of those guys, at least according to OPS and WRC+. I know they both have more homers, slug a little bit more, but now Freeman, when he gets the start, which I think he will because he's the leading vote getter, and I think closing just finished up like 3 hours ago, so that should be announced either later today or tomorrow who the starters will be. I think he's going to be the starter, and it now is like deserving. He is pretty much has better numbers than both of those guys. Maybe you could argue Harper, and Harper probably deserves to be the guy because it's in Philly, but I don't care about that. Freddie Freeman, you're the starting first baseman for the NL, I believe. That'll be pretty exciting. Dodgers should have both of their infield corner guys, hot corner men at the All-Star game, Max Muncy and Freddie Freeman. So, before we end up looking ahead, the Dodgers will take on the Padres tonight. A rare, quick turnaround. 3-game series Monday through Wednesday, and then a 4-game series. So we don't have an off day. We get to watch the Dodgers tonight, which is great. Dodgers will take on the Padres for 4 in L.A. All right, it'll be Roki Sasaki taking on Randy Vasquez tonight. Shohei Ohtani will take on Michael King Friday night. Yoshinobu Yamamoto will take on Griffin Canning Saturday night. And then Emmett Sheehan will take on J.P. Sears, the left-hander, Sunday night. That'll actually be on Sunday Night Baseball, I believe. Pretty big series. Dodgers have a chance not to close up the division or anything like that, but maybe bury the Padres in terms of the division pretty early. They do have like an 11-game lead or something, I believe. And they do have, right now, they are winning the season series. If they could win 3 out of 4 or sweep the Padres, they pretty much put the series the season series to bed, which is key in terms of the tiebreakers. I'm not going to say the division is done for, because exactly 1 year ago when July came around, specifically 4th of July weekend, the Dodgers were rolling, and that was what started the cold stretch of the Dodgers for the remainder of the second half, basically. And the Dodgers had a similar lead over the Padres, and that got dwindled down to them literally being in second place. So I'm not going to say it's over by any means. We learned that last year. But if you could win 3 out of 4, possibly sweep the Padres, you put yourself in a fantastic position in early July in terms of the division. So it's a big series. This will be a big series. First time the Padres will come to San Diego. I'm pretty sure with the way the season series works, we'll get to see the Padres one more time in LA, because both times they've played the Padres were in San Diego. That'll probably be later in like August or September. Probably September if I had to guess, with the season maker with the schedule makers. So that's all I have for you guys. Great series in Sacramento. I was going to say Oakland, but it's not Sacramento. It's Oakland. Dodgers will take on the Padres for 4. I hope you guys are excited for that. I know I am. As always, you can get this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on all social media at Talking Blue Pod. Follow myself at Nick Talking Ball on X. We'll see you guys Sunday. Have a happy 4th of July weekend to recap this series between the Dodgers and the Padres. Thank you guys so much for listening.